To introduce our speaker, Khalik Pierce. Khalik Pierce holds many titles. He is a strategist, operations guru, business-to-business specialist, vendor wrangler, risk mitigator, thought leader, and military veteran. Mr. Pierce has merged his love for technology, anthropology, and psychology to successfully lead programs at both Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies over his 25-year career. Outside of work, he helps others to exceed their goals by using clarity and integrity as guidelines. He also is a member of Blacks in Cybersecurity and has mentored with our mentorship program for many years. Today, he will be sharing insights on the history of technology and will discuss the comparison in accountability between a person's social responsibility and their cyber responsibility. And we will discuss this topic over the past 30 years and what it will look like over the next 30 years. Please join me in welcoming Khalik Pierce.
Ooh, come on, you guys can be better than that. Sound no, not that hype. All right. Listen, like I mentioned a couple minutes ago, for those that may not have been in the room, this is going to be much more personal, right? So if you don't mind just coming forward just a little bit. The key about this entire discussion is critical thought, so it requires your participation. I know, right? Who wants to participate in the conversation? I get it. It's ugly. But just a little bit. I know. It's tough. All right, so for those that had a chance to look at the schedule, the name of the discussion is Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Convenience, How Laziness Has Become Worth More Than Privacy. So, because there's a pretty wide age gap in the room, I'm going to start with a very short history lesson. Is that okay? So we're going to start with the Constitution of the United States. Now, I know most of you have heard it in school, outside of school, whatever, but we're just going to read through just a portion of it, right? All right, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain undeniable, unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, that's the first sentence from the second paragraph of the Constitution of the United States. Guys, bad timing. You gotta just leave it till we get finished. Sorry about that. We've been having technical difficulties all morning. So that's the first sentence from the second paragraph of the Constitution, right? Now that was signed and ratified on July 4th, 1776. Most people should know that, even if you're a naturalized citizen. It's 250 years ago. Doesn't sound like it's important and like it matters, but it does. That's our baseline, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident, meaning they really shouldn't have to be up for discussion. It should be a given that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator. So it's not telling you that you have to be a part of a specific religion or not. Even though this country was established on Judeo-Christian values, it doesn't matter. Your Creator created you with certain unalienable rights. That means those rights can't be taken away or denied, regardless of what anybody says. And that among those rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay? We're agreed there? We're good there? All right. So that speaks to the idea, the unalienable part, speaks to the idea that there are three natural rights that every living person has to be given, or has been given by their Creator. Those three things. Now we're going to break those down a little bit, just to make sure everybody understands what they are. Life was one of them, right? Life is defined by the Oxford English Dictionary, which is supposed to be the world's most accurate dictionary, as being the condition, quality, or fact of being a living person. So, if you exist, you have a beating heart, you're breathing, moving, what have you, that's considered to be life, and you have the right to be alive. All right, second, liberty. Again, by the Oxford English Dictionary, is defined as freedom from arbitrary arbitrary, despotic, or autocratic control. So arbitrary would be based on somebody else's opinion. So nobody can say to you, because they believe you should or you shouldn't, that you don't deserve liberty, just because that's their opinion. Nobody can say to you, based on despotic, which would be tyrannical, right? So I can't dominate you. I'm not supposed to just dominate you and tell you whether or not you should be free or not. And I shouldn't just be able to autocratically or dictatorially say that you can't be free. So I can't or shouldn't set up a system that says, hey, look, because you're not a part of the winning team, you don't get to be free. So you deserve, just because you exist, to be alive, and you deserve to be able to be free. Just because of that. That's what our Constitution starts out with. The third is happiness, defined as the state of pleasurable contentment of mind or contentment with your own circumstances. So I don't even get to tell you what to or not to be happy about. You get to decide that for yourself. That's what this country was established on. Now granted, listen, you can have all the opinions and political affiliations you want. That's straight out of the Constitution. Can we all agree to that? Great. So moving on, you can be alive, you can be free to live within the laws of the land, and you can decide when and what to be happy or content about. Even though that should be simple enough, after the establishment of the country, after the establishment and ratification of this document on July 4th, 1776, it was still thought later, 11 years later, that another document called, that sits in the place the Charter of government within the United States needed to be established, right? And that was to create a more perfect union. Everybody good there? Not my opinion, documented. So there were 7 articles. They described the 3 branches of government, the relationships between the states, the powers of the federal government, et cetera, right? Stuff that you've all heard before. And then there are 10 amendments to that document. There are actually more than 10, but the first 10 are what we're going to use for this discussion. So again, there are more than 10, I understand. But we're only going to use the first 10 for this discussion. Are we agreed? We good there? Great. So let me just read through them really quickly. That first 10, by the way, is known as the Bill of Rights, for those that didn't know. Number 1, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of assembly, and freedom of petition. So, you have the right, outside of living, moving about within the laws, and deciding of your own contentment, what to serve as your God or your belief system, what to say or how you want to say it, what to report to other people, to assemble with other people, and to decide together collectively that you would like things to change. That's the First Amendment. Again, shouldn't really be up for discussion. I know it happens a lot, but that's written, documented. This country was supposedly built on that. Second, right to keep and bear arms in order to maintain a well-regulated militia. We're not going to get into what a well-regulated militia is. We're not doing that. But that is your Second Amendment right. Third, no quartering of soldiers. For those that don't know what that means is that the government or the Army or the Navy or anybody else in the armed forces can't force you to have soldiers in your house and make you feed them or take care of them. And that was important for that time because before the country established its independence, Britain used to bring its soldiers over here as a part of trying to maintain control over the territories and force the local communities to harbor those soldiers, to care for them, to feed them, etc. So it was important to establish, no, you don't get to do that anymore. Nobody gets to do that. Cool? Number 4, freedom from unreasonable searches and seizures. So I can't, just because I don't like you, just because I think you might be doing something, etc., just kick in your door or come peek in your window or whatever and start to look around. I can't just come into your driveway because, I don't know, you shoplifted or something like that and take your cars and all your possessions. You can't do it. It's illegal. 5, right to due process of law, freedom from self-incrimination, double jeopardy, etc. So, if you do get caught, allegedly, no, tough one. If you do get caught allegedly committing a crime, you have the right to a trial. You have the right to have your day in court. And in that, you can't self-incriminate. So there's a difference between admitting that you did something and then mistakenly incriminating yourself. Can't self-incriminate, and you can't be tried twice for the same convicted crime. So if you're one of those people that decided to murder your spouse and they convict you for it, they can't convict you for it twice. That's what double jeopardy is. Number 6, right of accused persons to have a speedy trial. So they can't just lock you in jail and leave you somewhere and decide 3 or 4 years that you get your day in court. No, you have a right to a speedy trial. Number 7, right to trial by jury. Number 8, and that's not only in criminal cases, but in civil cases as well. Number 8, freedom from excessive bail, cruel and unusual punishments, right? So if you get pulled over for a traffic ticket, they can't take you to jail and then beat you and flag you in front of the town square. That's cruel and unusual. Number 9, other rights of the people. Again, it's not necessarily spelled out, but the concern was if they didn't leave that item in there, that somebody will say, well, listen, you only got the rights that are listed in the first 8, so that's it. We can do whatever else we want. No. People deserve other rights as well. We just don't have the time or the space to list them all out right here. We just wanted to get the general idea. And then powers reserved by the states, right? Because keep in mind, in the beginning, we established the separation between federal and state level, the relationship between the different states, et cetera, right? So we could go much deeper. We know that there are more amendments. We could break down the different layers or branches of the government. We could do all of that. But really, the point is to establish that there is no question, there should be no question, regardless of your religious affiliation, political affiliation, race, creed, culture, background, doesn't matter. In this country, you are considered to have the right to certain freedoms. So we're all good there. Does anybody question that before we move forward? Remember, I want you to participate. This is not just for you to listen to me talk like a talking head. This is for you to engage. This is for critical thought. So is there anybody that challenges or questions that? Great. So, what does any of that have to do with the subject matter? If you take a 50,000-foot view of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, etc., those freedoms that those documents say that you have, from my perspective, are based on your ability to retain control over your life. Meaning, like for example, life. If you don't want to jump off a bridge, you should be able to make that decision for yourself. You should be able to remain alive because that's one of your rights. Happiness, again, I don't get to tell you. No one else gets to tell you. So all that stuff's documented. So if control is the key to you enjoying or taking advantage of your freedoms, then what's happening in the world? How are the technologies that we've been using, that we've been creating, that we've enjoyed to give us certain conveniences, removing that control, That is where we get into the gist of this discussion. There are technologies that, although may have been created for the benefit, for the greater good, that are being used and continue to have the potential to be used to take the control away from you that you would have to maintain your own freedoms. And that's very important to discuss, not only with us today, but with each other. Because the more and more that becomes ignored, not only are you impacted, but so are your peers, so are your family members, so are the people in your communities, so are the people that come after you. How do they do that? How do the powers that be take that control away from you? How are you, in the search of convenience, giving up that control to other people? One of the things is using technologies that expose your information. Well, that doesn't happen, right? Nobody puts their information out for it to be exposed, right? I mean, clearly I'm being facetious. But there's some major items that have taken place in your lifetimes that have exposed your information. And I'm not talking about data breaches. For example, Zoom. Zoom has been one of the top culprits. They were approached and investigated, and it was proven that Zoom was taking all the information that they gathered so that you could use their software, their technology. They were taking all your information and selling it. All of it. Well, I was just getting on a meeting. I just wanted to talk to my coworkers or whatever for a moment. Okay, but what information did you give to do so? Your name, your location, your internet usage. Wait, no, I didn't tell them that. But in all the policies or whatever that you have to agree to use that software, you agreed to let them have access to it. Your application habits. You agreed by using their platform, by using their software, to allow them to see whatever device that you're using, all of the applications on that device and the way that you use them. Now, how many people in the room knew that? And you still use it?
I was going to say, like, when in regards to using Zoom for company or business-wise, sometimes you don't have a choice because some people use Zoom, some people use Google Meet.
Okay, but there you go, right? That comes back to the point. Your ability to maintain control is what determines whether or not you'll be able to enjoy the freedoms that this country says you're supposed to have. Now, as it relates to your company or your business, there are ways around it. For example, and I admit this openly, so for those of you that have followed me on LinkedIn or what have you, you don't have to worry about telling, they know. I do not do video calls over Zoom, WebEx, Teams, or the other applications. I refuse. Am I telling you I haven't caught flack for it? Yeah, of course I have. But I won't do it. I refuse to do it. I will only use the dial-in options of those applications and those platforms, personally, because I don't want my information to be exposed. I have that option. Now, they can suggest that you do otherwise, but you still have your own options. Google actually violated children's privacy laws. Now, how many people knew that? Now, think about it. For those of you that have kids, nieces, nephews, younger cousins, mentees, what have you, they're online playing games on Google like crazy. They're downloading games from the Google App Store, all that stuff. Well, those games are collecting information from what they knew, at the time, what they knew to be minors. And they sold that information. Sold it. Now, how scary is that? Again, I don't know what your affiliations or what your stances are, and I'm not asking. But for those people who feel like things like pedophilia are not okay, which in this country happens to still be against the law, Google took the information from people that were considered to be minors and sold it to other companies. Now, you don't want pictures of your kids or the minors that you're attached to be out on the internet, but you're allowing this corporate entity to take their information and make it available to other people to use. It kind of sounds like a conflict, but that goes back to the control thing, right? We're doing things out of convenience without paying attention to the consequences. Facebook. Many of you may have paid attention, some of you may have been heads down, but the whole Cambridge Analytica scandal, where they were forcibly shoving information down your throats that was known to be incorrect in a hope to get you to vote a certain way, in a hope to get you to lean a certain way. It actually happened. It's not opinion. It's not conspiracy theory. It took place. Anybody not know about that? All right. Ring doorbell. All the apps that you use to view those cameras had trackers all over them. Temu, however you say it. I know at the Super Bowl there was a big discussion about that, but however you say it, they knowingly sold products at a loss so that you would use their application, and then mined all of the data from every platform you use to access their application to then understand who and what you are, and then not only analyze that information, but to sell it. How many knew that? Good stuff, good stuff. Consumer reporting agencies and consumer disclosure agencies, right? So a lot of people who talk about credit repair and understand what their credit reports are, what they should be, what your credit score should be. They think that there's 3 credit bureaus, but they understand that there are reporting agencies and disclosure agencies under those bureaus that capture your information, analyze it, and build profiles that they then disclose to the credit bureaus. So the bureau hasn't decided that you are a risk. Some company like LexisNexis has decided that you're a risk. Well, you know, what's the big deal, right? I made some purchases, I didn't make some payments. Maybe they have good info, maybe they don't. You have no idea what algorithms they're using, how they're building a profile, and what other info they're pulling from other applications to build those profiles. Another example, and then we'll move on. Face Finder, anybody familiar with that? It was first tested on a public scale, at a large public scale, Super Bowl 35 in Miami. So every camera in that stadium was used to capture facial biometrics. Now, there were notices put up on the doors for people that bought tickets to go to the game that said, hey, your biometrics will be captured as you watch this game, but most people didn't understand what that meant. So they used it as a test to see how many criminals they could identify in the stadium. Now, supposedly, out of those 80,000 people that were there, they only identified less than 100. Now, I find that hard to believe, but that's what was disclosed. Why does that matter? Because all of that information is being used against you. Now, we can start with the little low-end stuff that nobody really cares about or everybody knows about. Like, for example, you're having a conversation in a room. I say to my friend, you know, I've been looking for a new car and I really think that the Toyota is a great way to go. And then next thing you know, on every app on your phone, you're seeing Toyotas. Toyota this, Toyota that, what have you. It's annoying, but it doesn't feel like a real problem initially, right? We're so accustomed to us and our peers and everybody else going through it that we just say, just brush it off and keep going, almost like a mosquito. Nobody likes them, but we're not out on a hunt to kill every mosquito that ever existed. You just kind of deal with it. But then what about some of the more painful stuff? Like, for example, targeted redlining. Fatu was in the back today during her speech, talked about redlining that happened in New York. Different communities, right? Now I know it, a lot of people hear about and have a tendency to talk about black communities, but it's happened not only to blacks and other people of color, but it used to also happen to a lot of different immigrants. Keep in mind that even though you don't hear about it today, once upon a time, people from Poland, from Turkey, from Italy were considered to be not so nice. So imagine those communities as well. Even though I might not look like you, some of those may, were redlined. They're being told, hey, listen, because you are of XYZ descent, you don't get to have credit. Now, that's nuts. Well, for a lot of people, it's like, yeah, but that happened 200 or 300 years ago. No, it's happening now. Today. They do it for credit, housing, state and federal programs, even employment. Now imagine that. You're on, I don't know what the latest sites are for in employment, LinkedIn or what have you. And you're applying and you're applying and applying. You can't figure out why, with all the experience and all the exposure that you have, that you aren't getting jobs. Only to do a deeper dive and find out that you're not getting jobs because somebody knows that you like to spend more time during the week watching football scores than you do productive time. It shouldn't be anybody else's business. You should be able to spend every hour of the day that isn't promised to somebody else doing whatever you want. Again, the liberty aspect, the three natural things we talked about, is just that. Why can't you spend it watching cat videos? Why can't you spend it looking up guns? Why can't you spend it watching little kid videos where they slip and fall and hurt themselves, which I find to be hilarious, but Surveillance pricing. Who's ever heard of that in this room? Anybody else heard of surveillance pricing? For those that don't know, they take the information from all these different apps, all your social media, all of that, and they decide, hey, you're in an emotional state where you can be exploited. You've only got 30 days left on your lease. You're going to be moving soon. So if you look for a moving truck, we're going to charge you 20% more. You as an individual, because we know you got to have it. That's a scary thought. We're going to charge you as an individual more for a dating app because you're going through a divorce. But you didn't announce that to anybody. It's not like you went to the newspaper and said in the front page, I'm going through a divorce. Now, don't get me wrong, I know some people celebrate it, right? But again, that third natural right of happiness and contentment, you should get to choose how you feel about it. You should get to choose how that impacts your life. And here is a group of conglomerate companies, what have you, pooling your information together and using it against you. And then we talked about facial recognition, right? Now, a lot of people think it's great, right? You got your iPhone. Ooh, I could just push a button, look at my iPhone, and then it unlocks for me. It's really simple. I can do it while I'm driving, even though I shouldn't. I can do it while I'm walking. I can do it while I'm multitasking. It makes things so much easier. Again, back to that convenience thing. But for those that don't know, facial recognition is the most unreliable, the least accurate of all biometrics. Now, who in the room knew that? The select few who have that niche, right? Congrats to you. But the masses don't know that. They aren't aware. So again, referencing back to a speech that was given earlier, you go to a game, you come somewhere like Vegas, and you're just on the strip walking along with a group of people, and it's decided.
This would just because the mic is messing up.
Okay, we'll turn that one off. So you're in a place like Vegas, and you decide to go to a casino, a restaurant, what have you, and the group of people that you're walking with, some company have decided are a risk. And so because you're associated with them, because you chose to go out and eat with them, because you chose to spend time with them, you are now being flagged. Because you chose to go eat a steak, you're being flagged. Or, for some people, chose to find a vegetarian place or a vegan place, you're being flagged. And someone else decides that you're going to pay more. Someone else decides that because you went to a casino that you're not going to have a certain job. Someone else decides that because, I don't know, one of the things that in the communities that I come from is talked about a lot is anything while black, driving while black, walking while black, shopping while black, because I've decided to have 4 or 5 of my peers that look like me in a particular place, I'm gonna have a problem with employment. But that's easy, that's too on the nose. Most of us grew up, hearing that kind of stuff. But what about you guys? What about because of your sexual affiliation or because of your attachment to somebody else who has an affiliation that's different from yours? What if all of your finances change because of that? What if your ability to live in a particular area changes because of that? What if your access to the information superhighway changes because you have a niece or a nephew that chooses to have an alternative lifestyle? It doesn't matter what our opinions are. Based on where we started, based on the documents this country was based on, that is not freedom. But we as a group, we as communities, we as a country are giving away that control to other companies, to other conglomerates, to other smaller government agencies, etc., for convenience. Because we want to spend 6 or 7 seconds entering a passcode into a phone. Because we would rather go and sit in the front row at a stadium versus taking the cheap seats. Because we want to go to the stadium at all instead of just watching it from home. Because we wanted the smartest TV with a camera on it instead of just having one that has a good picture. Convenience has become the exchange for your freedoms. So with that, now that we've established those things and put that stuff out there, what are your thoughts? What does that mean to you? Does it mean anything to you? Please, sir.
I just gonna ask, do you think the ship has kind of already sailed? Like, you think it's like a little too late?
So I'm going to use an ugly example to make a point to that or respond to that. Once upon a time, slavery was legal. And we don't even have to go that far. Once upon a time, indentured servitude was legal, right? And worldwide, not just in this country. And at some point, we won't argue into how it started or whatever, but at some point, enough movement happened and enough momentum piled up to where those things are no longer allowed in our society, from a legislative standpoint and from a moral standpoint. Even though once upon a time, it was morally acceptable to have servants and slaves. You couldn't go anywhere without seeing it. Even if you didn't have them for yourself, you knew somebody, you were no more than 1 degree removed from somebody who had a servant or a slave. And now that is no longer the case. So even though we may be knee deep in it, I believe, and I think the history also shows, that if collectively enough of us were to understand what was actually happening, we could do something about it. But that's why discussions like this are so important. And that's why this is an interactive one, and not just somebody sitting and talking at a bunch of people in chairs. What else? Please.
So there's this thing called automated tracking systems that employers use when you upload your resume, where they automatically take your name, all the work that you do, and they put it on the system to check it. How do we keep our information private when we have to put our stuff into these systems to try to get hired?
Okay, so I purposely did not use or did not list any of the companies or any of the services you can use to try to decrease or eliminate your digital footprint. but there are lots of companies out there that do. And the reason I didn't want to list anything is because I didn't want to give the impression that myself or that the organization was endorsing a particular agency. But there are agencies that you can, sign up for and spend as, whatever amount monthly as a service, where they go out and sweep to make sure that everything out there about you is either what you want to be out there or is not out there at all. Also, I mentioned the consumer reporting agencies. You can go and Google a list of every one of those groups and then opt out of each one. Most people didn't know that. You think that they just have to have access to it and that's what it is. It's not. You can opt out of it. Again, I hate to keep referencing Fatu, but I was just so moved by her speech today. One of the other things that was talked about today is going through the TSA checkpoints in the airport. You can opt out of that facial scan. Did you guys know that? Now, it might not create a fun morning for you, but you can. You can say, listen, I don't want to be facially scanned. Please just review my ID and check it yourself. There's ways you can opt out of pretty much everything that's out there, but at the cost of some convenience. And that is the price that we have to understand as a collective, back to your question. We have to understand that that convenience isn't worth what we're exchanging for it. We have to understand and agree. We don't have to agree what religion is the number one religion. Listen, I don't even want to have the conversation, seriously, personally. But we do need to agree that those conveniences aren't worth our privacy. Sir.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could speak on what seems to be an uptick or prevalence in DNA collection. I know it started with African Americans wanting to, quote unquote, trace your roots, but now it's like, oh well, we'll collect your DNA and show you how you use fingerprints, or we'll collect your DNA and show you how you learn differently. So there's a lot of different companies out there that are collecting DNA at scale. And I was wondering if you could talk about some of the issues that come about because of that.
Yeah, actually, some of the earlier usages or some of the earlier motivations were people attempting to prove or disprove their alignment with some of the Native American tribes or indigenous tribes in the United States because of some of the rights and stuff that come with being associated with a particular tribe. But not to dive into that too much, these companies don't disclose to you that once they gather your information, that they own it. And most of us don't read the disclosures. Hey, it would be nice to see if I have a sister or brother or a long lost uncle out there that I didn't know about. But at what cost? Literally, you're talking about from having your DNA profile owned by a company that you don't even know exists, and then being able to use that information to clone, to experiment, to do things like stem cell related research, etc., just because you wanted to try to find a long lost relative or figure out what tribe you're associated with or what country that you come from ancestrally. That's crazy. What is it worth? I'll go another step further. For those who either have children or who have been given birth to children, did you know that you had the right to keep all of what's involved in childbirth when you leave? Is there anybody that didn't know that? Why is it important? Let's take a placebo, right? Or even your umbilical cord. The amount of stem cells in that is enormous. And keep in mind that a lot of the medical research that was done in this country started with a particular woman whose stem cells were exploited and extracted over years. And that was hundreds of years ago, right? Imagine what they can do with yours now, especially when, after you leave it, because you didn't know you had the right to it, they take ownership of it. You go and you sign up for a driver's license, which, we're not going to get into civil versus common law and that kind of stuff, right? There's some there's some intricacies in there that I don't think a lot of people know about either, but this is not the right forum for that. But when you sign up for a driver's license or a state or a federal ID, you have the option to list yourself as an organ donor. And most people say, well, you know, I'm going to be dead afterwards. What difference does it make? But they get to do whatever they want with the organs and the material that they harvest from your body once you die. But what if that's to make another you? Oh, they don't have the technology. Are you sure? They're making goats and horses and stuff over in the Middle East. Camels. It sounds weird, but they are cloning racing camels in the Middle East. Racing camels. If they can do that, they can clone you. The only reason you don't hear about it more is because there's no legislation to make it morally acceptable. There's no legislation that says they can ram it down your throat yet. But once it comes, it'll be there. How do you know? Because they're already using farmed meat. Come on, folks. I know we're still breathing and all that. Please, sir. Oh,
I
oh
think when
man.
it comes to medical stuff, there's an ethical versus a convenience part. Like, for example, using DNA testing to find out that you have a disadvantage towards breast cancer. To me, I feel like that's something that I would want to know, and that might benefit more to me from an ethical perspective than so much convenience perspective, if that makes sense.
It does, and I would agree with you 100%. That being said, it would be in your best interest, it would behoove you to pay attention to who does those tests, how those tests are being run, who owns the data afterwards, right? All the disclosures that are online. And every time you go to the hospital or a doctor's office for anything, they make you sign all kinds of stuff. Most people, out of convenience, don't take the time to read it.
It's legalese too, sometimes you can't even understand it.
Right, but then you took the time to learn math. No, listen. Some of the people in the room have children born here in the United States who've taken the time to learn Spanish, taking the time to learn Mandarin. Why not? Why wouldn't you take the time to learn some of that stuff? You could. You could associate yourself with people who do, right? One of the gentlemen in the back, I'm trying my best to build a better relationship with, but he's an attorney. And so, along with him and some others like him, I have a network of people that I call every time I see something I don't understand. Listen, what does this mean for me? I don't need you to give me the history, just tell me, if I sign this, what does it mean? Nothing stopping you from doing that. Sir, yes, please.
A couple things, going back to what you were talking about in terms of having a child. There's a bunch of questions you also get asked for the birth certificate.
Right.
Yeah, I refused those questions, and it was absolutely inconvenient because I had to spend 3 hours with them trying to figure out on the computer how to not put in those questions in order to get the birth certificate generated.
Right.
But you don't have to answer them.
You don't.
The other thing, I was curious if you have read Neil Postman's Abusing Ourselves to Death.
I've scanned it.
It ties in very closely with a lot of the things that you're talking about, because it's not just convenience, but amusement is another reason that we give up a lot of our sense of thinking and ideas and control as well.
Absolutely. And to that point, one of the reasons why I use convenience as a focal point for today's talk, because most of the people in this building at this time use all the technologies that are being reviewed or are interested in the technologies that are being displayed out of convenience. Now, some of us are here because, you know, it helps with our employment. But some of us are here just because we're curious, right? And so, like, for example, I've been playing around with smart home stuff. I don't know if anybody else has tried to play around with that or not, but IoT is scary. It's really scary. You know, I don't know why you want to be able to pick up your cell phone and see what's in your refrigerator, but if you feel the need to do that, go right ahead. Just understand that there's at least 100 other people that are looking at that same information once you do it. Please.
I mean, the young lady here said, and the gentleman back there said about, basically putting it all together with the, let's say you donate to Bill Corp, right, to get stem cells or find a DNA pattern. There's nothing really out there connecting the picture of whatever DNA collection agent it is that sends it off to your insurance companies and finds out, oh, you're pretty close to breast cancer, but as long as we charge you at a higher elevated before you're diagnosed with it, you just pay a higher portion rather than once you're diagnosed with it, then they're like, okay, we can't raise your elevated.
Listen, in some cases from a, excuse me, a surveillance pricing standpoint, they don't even wait for you to be diagnosed. They look at your family history. And so next thing you know, you're paying more for a CAT scan than the average person on the street. And most people didn't know, especially people who have insurance provided by their corporate entities. Most people don't know that there's literally 2 separate prices for most of those tests, at least 2. You got the one that they charge the insurance company, who they know has the money for it, and then they have the price that they charge people who they know can't afford it. And in most cases, like for example, a CAT scan, the difference in those prices is about $10,000. Let's not even get into x-rays. Now, you might bargain for a car, you might go back and forth and haggle about a house, but when did you ever thought to haggle about your medical exams? You have the right to. Without discussions like this, without us getting together and talking to each other about these types of things, we'll never know. Sir.
So you made a comment about having to do stuff here because of work, and there's other advantages to what's called accepting the terms of use. How do you get around things you can't avoid if you have to do it in order to do certain things? Because essentially, you're going to put yourself in the category of cannot do in a lot of instances.
All right, well, let me use something that's less about technology as a response, right? The young lady here mentioned ethics, right? Well, what about integrity? There are some companies, there are some industries who would have you bend or forget that integrity even exists. Your choice to be there is still up to you. Right? And I get it, right? Hey, listen, no, I don't have a choice. It's hard out here to get work. This just happened to be the company that was willing to hire me. Okay. But how important is it to you to remain off that radar? How important is it for you to have the freedoms that this country says you should have? Does that mean going and learning a trade? Does that mean potentially building a better network so that you can work for a different type of company? Does that mean going to that company and using some of the other legal services that are out there to say, listen, I opt out of XYZ exposure while I'm here. And legally, once you're employed, those companies cannot retaliate against you. Now, will it hurt your career chances? Absolutely, in most cases. But it's a chance we take. Just the same way from integrity, it's a chance I take when I say to somebody, no, I'm not going to commit fraud. If I tell my manager or my manager's manager, an executive, et cetera, that I'm not going to do something that's considered to be illegal, I almost guarantee that I'm going to commit career suicide. We were having a conversation at dinner the other night about people who served in the armed forces. I'm a veteran. I was in the United States Army. There is this thing, this article within the Uniform Code of Military Justice that I'm summarizing, right? I don't want anybody to try to get upset with me, but I'm summarizing that no soldier, no service person has to follow an unlawful order. So you can opt out. You can say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's unlawful. I'm not going to kill these civilians. And yes, it is going to hurt your career more than likely, because a lot of your peers are more concerned about whatever it is that they're fighting for than you are. It's a chance that we have to take. Now, to your point, in the salmon colored shirt, the more of us that do it collectively, the more of us that choose to do it as a community, regardless of the content of our experiences, regardless of the amount of melanin we do or don't have in our skin, the more that we stand together in those situations, the less opportunities there will be for companies, for groups, etc., to take advantage of us. Now, again, to this gentleman's point here, even if we don't look at convenience, let's look at prejudices. Prejudices, not discrimination, prejudices. Part of your right. If I don't want you in my house because I don't know who you are, I get to say you can't come in. That is a prejudice. I know the term gets co-opted and used in all types of ways or whatever, but that in and of itself is a prejudice. I have a son that's allergic to peanuts. If he chooses not to eat peanut butter, if I tell this restaurant that if you cook with peanut butter, please, not peanut butter, with peanuts, to let me know because we're not going to eat your food, that's all right. We get to choose to do that. Well, so how much of those are we willing to set aside for what could be considered to be the greater good? Sir.
So, first off, I just want to say I agree with most things you say. I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate. So
Please.
I kind of thought about quite a bit.
Welcome it.
So, rather than view this through the lens of convenience, you can almost view this through the lens of actually making things affordable. Like,
Affordable. That's an interesting point.
Facebook, the whole web and online community, everything's done through marketing. All the funding comes from advertising. It comes from selling this data. If we were to suddenly change the system from an automatic opt-in system to where everything is collected automatically to an opt-out system where you have to give them your data or selectively choose to apply and let them have your data, we might be in a situation where most of the online market and most of the things that exist out there, the conveniences you say, which are conveniences true, but they're also services, they're also features, they're also things that we want. A lot of those things would suddenly either become just not affordable, they won't be around. I mean, I think a lot of the internet is built upon this thing that we're questioning. So I think we have to be very careful about potentially changing some stuff. And I agree. Like I said, I agree wholeheartedly. I hate all this stuff. I don't use like Zoom, any of that stuff. I hate it all. But if we were to change this, I think a lot of these things would become untenable for a lot of people.
You know, I agree that it would be uncomfortable, but keep in mind, like, for example, one of the reasons why we have situations like, for example, Fatu, what do they call the dead zones? The access dead zones? Say again? Broadband deserts, right? Part of the reason why that stuff happens is because there are certain groups of people who have decided that they don't want others to have access, and that's regardless of how much it would or wouldn't cost. So even though it could potentially become more expensive, it could become less accessible. What's more important to the greater majority? And not to say that the greater majority is always right, because it's not, right? You got the whole lemming idea or the allegory of the cave, right? For those that don't know, look up Plato's Allegory of the Cave. It's a good read. Where that kind of stuff can be influenced, but there's always going to be a trade. We have civilization because there were groups of people that said, listen, I'm not strong enough to get out here and hunt and gather by myself. I need a group of people to help me with it because it'll be easier. But if we're going to work together, we got to have some understanding between each other. There's always going to be an exchange. Please.
Where do I begin? First, thank you for being here and doing your talk. I think that economy needs to work this kind of discussion, which we don't have. Second, I like the emblem there. I went through Panthers. In 2024, we're probably considered a domestic terrorist, sadly. But to the gentleman who talked about basically that you've already lost the privacy, you got to have a bad, what do you do? You talked about growing enough people, enough masks to develop and create changes. How do you do that when we don't see the viewers? We're distracted by the porn, we're distracted by the sports, we're distracted by all the conveniences of life, right? We're becoming a hedonistic society in large part.
And you know, the great part about it is take cybersecurity really quickly, and we're running out of time. I've already gotten to stop talking, sign a couple of times. But just really quickly, take cybersecurity. There's so many different layers. You got people who do nothing but pen tests, right? You got some people who do nothing but respond to incidents. You got some people who do nothing but do strategy, which is my thing, right? Collectively is how we make things safe. So you may not have a solution on your own, but the more we have the conversation and decide that we're going to work together, the closer we're going to get to one. I'm going to take this last question in the back, and then we got to stop before I get in trouble.
Just by accessing the internet, isn't that inherently like you're already giving up your data to the internet service providers?
It depends on who you access the internet through.
Well, most people are going to have to access it through the people who manage it, through the ISPs.
Most people choose. And that's one of the things that isn't well talked about or well known. It's a decision, right? Now, again, and we could take a lot of social examples, and I wish I had more time we could talk about them. But there are whole towns and communities, for example, to get together and say, you know what? We're not going to allow you to build a Walmart here because it's going to destroy our community. You have groups of religious groups who own whole communities, like, for example, Hasidic Jews own a lot of different communities across the United States, especially like upper Northeast New York, like Catskills and stuff like that. You can't do anything in those communities unless the community allows it. And that's because collectively they have decided that that's the way it's going to be. And they run the school districts, they run the city councils, they run everything, and they make it that way. Again, collectively, as we go back to our own communities, we can start to have this discussion more and more. We can start to ask each other to partner more and more, and we can get closer to it. Now, is it going to happen overnight? No. But we just got to push. Because again, once upon a time, people that look like me used to have to be outside of a field somewhere, right? Once upon a time, people that look like some of you weren't allowed to have jobs and live in certain communities, and we fought against it. We can change it, but we have to do it together. Thank you, that's my time. Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you.
I'm actually not someone that participates very often, but I'm very interested in not the most technical.
You find yourself in almost a
I'll see you in another chat.